History remembers the generals, the sword, the battlefield. But one man saved the American Revolution, not with weapons but with gold. His name does not appear on monuments. His face is on no currency. But without him, America as we know it would not exist. George Washington's army was starving, freezing, on the verge of collapse. The revolution was dying, not on the battlefield, but in an empty treasury. By 1778, the Continental Congress had almost no money left. Soldiers hadn't been paid in months. Some had no shoes. Others deserted. The dream of independence was crumbling. And then one man stepped forward. A Polish-born Jewish immigrant with no army, no title, and no battlefield. His only weapon was money, and it would change everything. This is the story of the man who saved the American Revolution, not once but twice, and was nearly erased from history entirely. Behind every great victory in this war stood a quieter kind of warrior, and history forgot him, until now. He was arrested by the British, sentenced to death, and still he found a way to escape, and still he kept fighting. In 48 hours, he raised $20,000, the equivalent of $500,000 today. And with that money, Washington marched to Yorktown, and the revolution was won. He died broke, in debt, forgotten by the nation he helped create. This is his story, and it's time the world finally heard it. Haym Salomon was born on April 7, 1740, in Leszno, Poland, then part of the vast Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. He was born to a Sephardic Jewish family, descendants of Spanish and Portuguese Jews who had fled the Inquisition, settling in Poland after their expulsion from Spain in 1492. For generations, Salomon's family had carried the weight of exile, survivors of one of history's most brutal religious persecutions. Resilience was in his blood. During his travels across Western Europe, Salomon absorbed something more valuable than any university degree. He learned the language of money, and the money of language. He mastered English, French, German, Italian, Polish, Spanish, and Russian. In a world where trade crossed borders and wars did too, a man who spoke every language was invaluable. In 1772, the first partition of Poland shattered his homeland. Salomon saw what was coming. He left, first for England, then for a new world still being born. In 1775, Haym Salomon sailed for New York City. He was 35 years old. He had little money, but he had knowledge, languages, and an instinct for commerce that few men in the colonies could match. New York City in 1775 was a boiling cauldron of commerce, politics, and revolutionary energy. For a man like Salomon, it was perfect. Salomon quickly established himself as a financial broker for American merchants engaged in overseas trade, advertising his services, building his reputation, connecting New York to European markets. He became a successful merchant, selling provisions for ships, building connections, earning trust. Life in colonial New York suited him perfectly. But war was coming, and when the revolution broke out in 1775, Salomon didn't hesitate. He joined the Sons of Liberty, the secret engine of colonial resistance. The Sons of Liberty were merchants, tradesmen, agitators, organizing protests, smuggling intelligence, preparing for rebellion. Salomon joined with characteristic energy and purpose. In September 1776, British forces captured New York City. They moved swiftly to crush the Patriot underground, and they came for Haym Salomon. He was arrested by the British as a spy. His connections to the Sons of Liberty were known. His fate seemed sealed. But the British quickly realized something. This prisoner spoke 7 languages, including German, and they had a problem that required exactly that skill. The British detained him for 18 months aboard a ship as an interpreter for the Hessian troops, the 30,000 German mercenaries hired by King George III to crush the revolution. What the British didn't know was that Salomon had already turned his position into a weapon. He was persuading Hessian soldiers, one by one, to desert the British cause. He encouraged hundreds of Hessian troops to desert. He helped American and French prisoners escape. He was a one-man underground railroad operating inside the British occupation itself. He funneled military intelligence directly to General Washington, troop movements, supply routes, patrol schedules, intelligence that shaped Continental Army strategy. For 18 months, his double life continued. But the British were watching. Their suspicions grew. And in 1778, they made their move. In 1778, Salomon was arrested again, convicted of espionage, sentenced to death by British military tribunal. A noose awaited him, but Salomon was not finished. The exact details of his escape remain unknown. What is certain is that he got out. He fled British-occupied New York with his wife Rachel and his infant son Ezekiel. He arrived in New Jersey, then walked to Pennsylvania. 2 weeks after his escape from New York, Haym Salomon reached Philadelphia, with little money, no prospects, and everything to rebuild. Philadelphia, 1778, the seat of the Continental Congress, the beating heart of the Revolution, and Haym Salomon's last chance to rebuild everything he had lost. He submitted a memorial to Congress on August 25, 1778, detailing his Patriot service, his losses, his sacrifice. Congress sent it to the Board of War, and then did nothing further. By 1780, Philadelphia's tax records told the story. Samuel Powell, £639,900. Isaac Moses, £115,000. Haym Salomon, £1,200. He had arrived with almost nothing, and nearly still had it. But Haym Salomon was not a man who stayed down. From near nothing, he would build one of the most important financial operations in American history. The question was how. By 1781, Salomon launched his career as a financial broker in Philadelphia, initially meeting clients at a coffee house daily from 12 to 2 in the afternoon. No office, just a table, some papers, and an unmatched mind. His first advertisement appeared in February 1781, announcing bills of exchange on France, St. Eustatia, and Amsterdam. 3 lines in a newspaper, the beginning of something historic. His reputation grew rapidly. His multilingual skills and deep knowledge of European banking set him apart from the more than 20 other brokers operating in Philadelphia. On May 10, 1781, Congress appointed Robert Morris as the first superintendent of finance, the forerunner to the Secretary of the Treasury. His job: save American finance from total collapse. Morris needed one thing above all else: a broker who could convert foreign bills of exchange into immediate American money without losing value in the exchange. He chose Haym Salomon. The partnership between Robert Morris and Haym Salomon became the financial backbone of the Revolution. Morris had the authority. Salomon had the connections. Together, they had a chance. Salomon's core task was converting foreign war loans from France and the Dutch Republic into immediate American currency. It required precision, trust, and a network no other broker possessed. Through Salomon, loans from France, Holland, and Spain were converted into real purchasing power: food, uniforms, weapons, and wages for the Continental Army. The soldiers being paid, fed, and equipped in those desperate camps didn't know his name. But everything they received passed through Haym Salomon's hands. Salomon personally supported members of the Continental Congress during their time in Philadelphia, including a young Virginia delegate named James Madison. He requested below-market interest rates. Often he asked for nothing at all. Madison wrote to fellow delegate Edmund Randolph in the summer of 1782, confirming that Salomon regularly completed financial transactions for Congress members, often without charging a penny. Salomon extended personal loans and outright gifts to key revolutionary leaders: James Madison, James Monroe, James Wilson, often never asking for repayment. He was funding the revolution from his own pocket. Among Salomon's gifts was a bequest to Dr. Bodo Otto, the senior army surgeon who had established the Valley Forge Hospital at age 65, often using his own funds for supplies. Salomon's gift allowed him to rebuild his practice after the war. Salomon stood out among more than 20 brokers operating in Philadelphia. His competitors collected 2 to 5% commission per transaction. Morris capped Salomon's commission at 0.5%. Salomon accepted. Even his small commissions were deposited into the Bank of North America, established by Congress in 1781 to fund government operations. Salomon himself purchased 2 shares. Every dollar he earned cycled back into the American cause. Robert Morris, in his diary entry from July 12, 1782, noted that Salomon has been useful to the public interest, one of the most understated endorsements in American financial history. On July 20, 1782, his official title appeared in print: Broker to the Office of Finance, to the Consul General of France, and to the Treasurer of the French Army. 1 man, 3 governments, 1 mission. By 1782, Haym Salomon had become the invisible center of American revolutionary finance. Not a general, not a statesman, but without him, the entire system would have collapsed. A financial crisis loomed in 1782. Revolutionary War soldiers and officers demanded their overdue salaries. Months, sometimes years, of unpaid wages. The army was on the edge of revolt. The government had promised $140,000 to officers by the summer deadline. They had $39,000. The gap was $101,000. Morris had one option. He turned to Haym Salomon. Salomon was instructed to sell bills of exchange to cover $101,000 in days. It was a nearly impossible task. He didn't hesitate. Working through the night, calling in every connection across Europe and the colonies, Haym Salomon raised the capital needed to pay the Continental Army's officers. The officers were paid. The mutiny was averted. The army held together. And the man responsible was a Jewish immigrant broker in Philadelphia, whose name most of them never knew. As broker to the French army's treasurer, Salomon managed complex multi-currency transactions that required fluency in finance, French, and the subtle art of international trust building. Salomon operated simultaneously as broker to the U.S. Office of Finance, the French Consul General, and the French Army's treasurer. 3 governments, 1 man, complete trust from all sides. From his Front Street office, Salomon brokered deals involving France, Holland, Spain, England, and St. Croix, making him arguably the most internationally connected financial operator in revolutionary America. Bills of exchange, contractual agreements between parties to pay money across borders, were the financial instruments of the revolution. Salomon's mastery of them was unmatched in the colonies. James Monroe was among the revolutionary leaders personally supported by Salomon. Like Madison before him, Monroe received loans with no pressure, no high interest, no timeline for repayment. Every bill of exchange Salomon brokered represented real soldiers being fed, real shoes on real feet, real ammunition in real muskets. Finance was not abstract, it was survival. By 1784, records indicate Salomon's personal lending to the American war effort exceeded $650,000, the equivalent of over $15 million in 2025. Most of it was never repaid. Even as he financed the revolution, Salomon maintained his identity and community. He helped fund the Mikveh Israel Synagogue in Philadelphia, refusing to let his work consume everything that gave it meaning. Salomon moved comfortably in the highest circles of revolutionary America, yet remained an outsider by birth, by faith, by the nature of his work. The indispensable man that history would choose to forget. But the years of relentless work, stress, and sacrifice were taking their toll. Salomon had contracted tuberculosis during his imprisonment on the British prison ship, and it was slowly killing him. His wife Rachel watched as the man she loved gave everything. His health, his fortune, his safety, to a country that was still deciding whether men like him truly belonged. The war was ending. The revolution had survived. In the streets of Philadelphia, Americans celebrated a freedom that Haym Salomon had quietly helped make possible, at enormous personal cost. As the celebration faded, Salomon faced a brutal reality. Over $600,000 in personal loans to the American government and its leaders, and almost none of it coming back. The revolution he saved had left him financially ruined. Even Robert Morris, the man who had trusted Salomon above all others, could not make the government repay what it owed. The new nation was broke, and Salomon had given more than it could ever return. Haym Salomon would not live to see the full flowering of the nation he helped build. But in his final years, walking through Philadelphia's free streets, he had no regrets. He had done what needed to be done. By the summer of 1781, Washington and his French allies had devised the boldest plan of the entire war: a massive southern march to trap British General Cornwallis at Yorktown, Virginia. Washington and Rochambeau agreed. They would march the combined Continental and French armies south from the Hudson Highlands and deliver the final blow to Cornwallis at Yorktown. There was one problem. One catastrophic, potentially revolution-ending problem. Washington's war chest was completely empty, and so was Congress. Without food, uniforms, and supplies, Washington's troops were close to mutiny. He needed at minimum $20,000 to fund the Yorktown campaign. Without it, the army could not move. When Robert Morris told Washington there were no funds and no credit available, Washington gave an order that would change history. Washington said, "Send for Haym Salomon." And within hours, a rider was galloping toward Philadelphia with a request that would determine the outcome of the American Revolution. The letter was clear. Washington needed $20,000 immediately, in 48 hours, or the Yorktown campaign, and potentially the entire revolution, would collapse. Working through the night, Salomon called in every relationship, every connection, every favor he had built across years of careful financial work. The revolution's entire southern campaign rested on this one night. By dawn, Haym Salomon had done it. Through the sale of bills of exchange across multiple nations, he raised the $20,000 Washington desperately needed. In 48 hours. From nothing, Morris received word that the funds were secured. Immediately, the money was dispatched to Washington's forces. The Yorktown campaign, the final act of the American Revolution, could begin. With that contribution, Washington set the Continental Army in motion. South from the Hudson Highlands toward Virginia, toward Yorktown, toward the end of a war that had lasted 8 years. Maryland and into Virginia. Converging on Yorktown in a strategic vice that would prove inescapable, the combined American and French forces marched from New York through New Jersey, Pennsylvania. In August 1781, the trap was sprung. The Continental Army on land. The French Navy under Admiral de Grasse blocking the sea. Cornwallis and his British forces were completely surrounded at Yorktown. Battle of the Chesapeake, September 5, 1781, sealed Cornwallis's fate. The French Navy defeated the British fleet, cutting off any possibility of British naval rescue or retreat. The siege of Yorktown began. French and American artillery battered British fortifications day and night. Washington directed the campaign with the precision of a man who had waited 8 years for this moment. Inside the British lines, Cornwallis faced the same crisis that had nearly destroyed Washington: a collapsing supply situation and an army pushed to its limits. Unlike Washington, he had no one to call for help. On October 17, 1781, a British drummer boy appeared at the fortifications with a white flag. Cornwallis was requesting terms of surrender. The guns fell silent for the first time in 8 years. On October 19, 1781, British General Cornwallis formally surrendered at Yorktown. 8 years of war ended on a Virginia field. The American Revolution was effectively won. Miles away in Philadelphia, Haym Salomon read the news of Yorktown in the morning paper. He had made this possible. He knew it, and he went back to work. Philadelphia erupted in celebration. The revolution had survived. America was free, and though no one in the street knew Haym Salomon's role, he did, and he was grateful he had lived to see it. Washington would be immortalized, his face on currency, his name on monuments. Haym Salomon would be forgotten. But the truth remains, without Salomon, there may have been no Yorktown to celebrate. From 1781 to 1784, records show Salomon's fundraising and personal lending provided over $650,000, equivalent to $15.1 million in 2025, in financing to the American war effort. The military victory at Yorktown did not end Salomon's work. The financial obligations of the revolution continued: foreign loans to broker, debts to service, a new nation's credit to establish. The founding fathers came to him one by one: Madison, Monroe, Wilson. He gave what they needed and asked for little in return. His office on Front Street was the quiet financial engine of the American founding. With the Treaty of Paris in 1783, the Revolution was officially over. The United States of America was a nation. Haym Salomon had helped build it from the financial ground up, and few would ever know. By 1784, Haym Salomon was dying. The tuberculosis he had contracted during his imprisonment on British ships was advancing. He was 44 years old and had aged beyond his years from the extraordinary pressure of his work. His wife Rachel and their children surrounded him in his final months. Even as his health collapsed, his mind remained sharp, teaching, planning, thinking about the country's financial future. On January 6, 1785, Haym Salomon died in Philadelphia. He was 44 years old. He died deeply in debt, having given far more to the American cause than it ever returned to him. After his death, Salomon's estate revealed the full extent of his sacrifice. He had extended hundreds of thousands in loans to the American government, and died with almost nothing to show for it. After Salomon's death, his widow Rachel petitioned Congress for repayment of the debts owed to her husband's estate. Congress, the body he had sustained for years, declined to help. As years passed and the new nation grew, Haym Salomon's name faded from public memory. His grave grew quiet. His story was left untold in the great histories being written about the Revolution. The great histories of the Revolution were written. Washington, Adams, Jefferson, Hamilton, and Haym Salomon, the man who funded them all, appeared in footnotes, if he appeared at all. In 1941, 156 years after his death, a bronze monument to Haym Salomon was unveiled in Chicago, depicting him alongside George Washington and Robert Morris. It was long overdue. The inscription on the Chicago monument reads, Haym Salomon, Patriot, he risked his all for American freedom. 17 words. For a life that deserved 17 volumes. In 1975, the United States issued a commemorative postage stamp honoring Haym Salomon, describing him as a contributor to the cause. A small acknowledgement, but an acknowledgement nonetheless. Look at the United States of America today, the wealthiest, most powerful nation in human history. Its foundations were laid in blood, sacrifice, and vision, and in the meticulous financial ledgers of one forgotten man. Ask most Americans to name the heroes of the Revolution. They will name generals, statesmen, patriots, and Haym Salomon will likely not be among them. That is the most American of injustices. His grave stands today in Philadelphia. Modest, quiet, visited by too few. Behind it rises the city he helped save. Before it stretches the country he helped build. He deserved better than footnotes. Salomon did. He asked for no credit. He sought no glory. He just did what needed to be done. Every American living in freedom today is, in some small way, the beneficiary of what Haym. The documents survive. The ledgers survive. The letters from Madison and Morris survive. The evidence is there for those willing to look. Haym Salomon was real. His sacrifice was real. And it is time we remembered. George Washington, Robert Morris, James Madison, James Monroe, Bodo Otto, Rachel Salomon, and Haym Salomon. Together they built a nation. He just never got credit for his part. The American Revolution was won by generals. But it was sustained by Haym Salomon, Polish-born Jewish immigrant, a broker, a spy, patriot, a hero forgotten by the nation he helped create. Until now. Haym Salomon, born April 7, 1740, Leszno, Poland, died January 6, 1785, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He contributed over $650,000 to the American Revolution. He died in debt. He was 44 years old. His story survives in archives, ledgers, and letters, waiting to be found by those willing to look past the generals and the monuments to find the people who truly made America possible. His weapon was money. His battlefield was the counting house. His army was a network of European creditors. And his victory was America itself. Every Hessian soldier Salomon convinced to desert was a blade removed from the British weapon pointed at American liberty. He didn't fight with muskets. He fought with words, in German, in the dark. No definitive portrait of Haym Salomon survives from his lifetime. History didn't think to paint him. History rarely thinks to preserve the indispensable ones. Every great image of the revolution has a financial story behind it. Who paid for the boats at the Delaware? Who funded the muskets at Bunker Hill? Often, the answer leads back to men like Haym Salomon. The Continental Congress debated endlessly how to fund the revolution. The answer was often just across the street, in a broker's office on Front Street, Philadelphia. Alexander Hamilton is celebrated as the architect of American finance. Haym Salomon financially sustained the revolution that made Hamilton's work possible. One is on the $10 bill. The other is on a discontinued postage stamp. Salomon was a man of faith. His Jewish identity was not separate from his patriotic commitment. It was its foundation. The values of his ancestors, justice, community, dignity, drove everything he did. The financial instruments Salomon mastered, bills of exchange, international credit, brokered loans, are the direct ancestors of the global financial system that makes Wall Street possible today. He was 250 years ahead of his time. Madison would go on to become the fourth president of the United States. He never forgot Haym Salomon, the man who kept him solvent when the country couldn't, funded the mind that wrote the Constitution. Haym Salomon's story is not just the story of one man. It is the story of every immigrant who arrived with nothing and gave everything, to a country still deciding whether to welcome them. The Yorktown Monument stands as testament to the great victory of 1781. Washington's name is inscribed in stone. The $20,000 that made the campaign possible, and the man who raised it are not mentioned. Philadelphia's streets still follow the colonial grid that Haym Salomon walked. The city celebrates its revolutionary history passionately. His name is still not prominently among those it celebrates. The recovery of Haym Salomon's story happens in moments like these. A parent and child at a monument, asking the right question. Who was he? He was the man who saved America, with money, with courage, with everything he had. In the end, what defines Haym Salomon is not the money. It is the choice. When the revolution needed saving, he chose to save it. When it cost everything, he paid the price. That is what a patriot does. Haym Salomon was one candle in the darkness of 1781. He burned so brightly and so completely that he lit the way for a nation. He deserved to be remembered. Remember him. His own words, written in 1778, say what no historian can fully capture. He lost everything. He kept giving. He asked for help and received none. He helped anyway. That is the story of Haym Salomon, the forgotten hero who saved the American Revolution, twice.